Hello and welcome back. Today we are starting chapter 3. This chapter is titled The Innocent Perception. And this first section in chapter 3 is titled Atonement Without Sacrifice. If you were like me and raised Christian, you may believe, as I did, that the atonement was a sacrifice. It was a sacrifice of Christ. He suffered in the Garden of Gethsemane. He was crucified on the cross. He was resurrected a few days later, 3 days later to be exact. And that made the atonement. So the atonement was the sacrifice of Christ. And this is saying atonement without sacrifice. So I hope you're paying attention. Paragraph 1. A further point must be perfectly clear before any residual fear still associated with miracles can disappear. The crucifixion did not establish the atonement. The resurrection did. Many sincere Christians have misunderstood this. No one who is free of the belief in scarcity could possibly make this mistake. Whoops. Guess that's me. If the crucifixion is seen from an upside down point of view, it does appear as if God permitted and even encouraged one of his sons to suffer because he was good. This particularly unfortunate interpretation, which arose out of projection, has led many people to be bitterly afraid of God. Such anti-religious concepts enter into many religions. Yet the real Christian should pause and ask, how could this be? Is it likely that God himself would be capable of the kind of thinking which his own words have clearly stated is unworthy of his Son? And this made me think of how the law has been in the Old and the New Testament. In the Old Testament, the law was eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Whatever wrong you do, you get equal punishment. The punishment must fit the crime, kind of thing. And then when Christ came, he established a law of love your enemies, do good to them that hate you, pray for them that despitefully use you. So it was definitely even when people have done wrong, still treat them well, still pray for them, still love them. And so I wonder if this is saying here, is it likely that God himself would be capable of the kind of thinking which his own words have clearly stated is unworthy of his Son? So if we need to love the people who do wrong and not try to exact punishment from them, is it possible that God would think that punishment needed to be exacted, especially from an innocent one? Christ was innocent. And we're saying that God believes that someone needed to be punished, even if they weren't the ones that committed the crime, which goes against any law that God has ever given as recorded in the scriptures. So an interesting thing to think about. Paragraph 2. The best defense, as always, is not to attack another's position, but rather to protect the truth. It is unwise to accept any concept if you have to invert a whole frame of reference in order to justify it. So for this one, I think, again, as I was raised, we had our reasons for believing that Christ needed to suffer for our sins. We believed that sins were real, which of course in Miracles talks about how it's just a lack of love, and not anything permanent, because we're basically in a dream. And nothing we do here in this dream will actually have lasting effects. So there's nothing that we do here that needs to be punished once we wake from the dream. So if we have to invert reality in order to justify why something is, then it is very unwise to accept that. If you have to say, well, God is unconditionally loving, God loves all of us equally, but he did allow this one child to be punished for everyone else's mistakes. I don't know. Does that sound like, you know what I mean? Like you have to kind of do a little bit of mental gymnastics in order to make that work. Because I don't think any of us, as parents, if you're a parent, which I am, I don't think any of us would punish one child and be able to justify that. You know what I mean? And so if we have to invert our whole frame of reference in order to justify God doing that, maybe there's something wrong with that premise. This procedure, which is inverting a whole frame of reference, this procedure is painful in its minor applications and genuinely tragic on a wider scale. Persecution frequently results in an attempt to justify, quote unquote, justify the terrible misperception that God himself persecuted his own son on behalf of salvation. The very words are meaningless. It has been particularly difficult to overcome this because, although the error itself is no harder to correct than any other, many have been unwilling to give it up in view of its prominent value as a defense. In milder forms, a parent says, "This hurts me more than it hurts you," and feels exonerated in beating a child. Can you believe our Father really thinks this way? It is so essential that all such thinking be dispelled that we must be sure that nothing of this kind remains in your mind. I was not punished, quote unquote, punished because you were bad. The holy benign lesson the Atonement teaches is lost if it is tainted with this kind of distortion in any form. The holy benign lesson the Atonement teaches is lost if it is tainted with this kind of distortion. How unfortunate that most of the people who believe in the atonement have tainted it with this distortion and kind of taken away the true lesson of the atonement. And then the rest of the world doesn't believe in the atonement. So it's kind of like, wow. Wow. This is something that would be good to correct. Paragraph 3. The statement, quote, "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord," close quote, is a misperception by which one assigns his own evil past, evil is in quotes, to God. Okay, I just want to pause here because every time it says evil in this section, it's in quotation marks. Evil. Just think for a second about why that might be. I'm going to start that over. So paragraph 3, the statement, quote, "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord," close quote, is a misperception by which one assigns his own evil past to God. The evil, again in quotes, the evil past has nothing to do with God. He did not create it, and he does not maintain it. God does not believe in retribution. His mind does not create that way. His mind does not create that way. He only creates perfection. And nothing can change the perfection that he makes or creates. So retribution isn't even a thing. Like, why would he need that? Why would you be punishing perfection? Interesting, huh? He does not hold your evil deeds against you. Is it likely that he would hold them against me? Be very sure that you recognize how utterly impossible this assumption is and how entirely it arises from projection. This kind of error is responsible for a host of related errors, including the belief that God rejected Adam and forced him from the Garden of Eden. It is also why you may believe from time to time that I am misdirecting you. I have made every effort to use words that are almost impossible to distort, but it is always possible to twist symbols around if you wish. So I just want to revisit. God does not believe in retribution. His mind does not create that way. He does not hold your evil deeds against you. Is it likely that he would hold them against me? This is Christ speaking. Be very sure that you recognize how utterly impossible this assumption is and how entirely it arises from projection. So remember, projection is when we think something about ourselves and then we project it outside of us onto the world or onto other people or whatever. So, this idea that our evil deeds are being held against us is a belief we have. And then we project that belief onto God and believe that God is holding our evil, quote unquote, evil deeds against us. So, this is entirely a projection belief. This is not something God actually does. And I find it interesting that it says, it is also why you believe from time to time that I am misdirecting you. And I think that that means, this is just my unprofessional opinion, but I think that that means sometimes we feel like the bad things that happen to us are a punishment. And we discussed this in a previous section. That sometimes we believe that the bad things that happen to us are a punishment for our misdeeds. And I wonder if that's what it means why we believe from time to time that Christ is misdirecting us. Kind of like, oh, you made that bad decision. Now I'm going to lead you down this path because you deserve to be punished. And so just, all these bad things are going to happen to you down this path. And that's not true. Nope. We're never led down a path for punishment. We are never led down a path for punishment. It's always a path where we will learn and grow. Or again, a path that maybe we chose before we came here and said, these are the things I want to experience. So we are only being taken down paths that will be helpful to us in the end, even though they may be painful and full of grief in the moment. And I know that may not be what some people need to hear. And hopefully it is something that someone else needs to hear. You are never led down a path because you deserve to be punished or because you are unlovable or unworthy. I think everyone needs to hear that. Paragraph 4. Sacrifice is a notion totally unknown to God. It arises solely from fear, and frightened people can be vicious. Sacrificing in any way is a violation of my injunction that you should be merciful even as your Father in heaven is merciful. It has been hard for many Christians to realize that this applies to themselves. Be merciful even as your Father in heaven is merciful. And that applies to yourself as well as to everyone else. Good teachers never terrorize their students. I've been on this soapbox before, so I'm not going to go into it again. But using fear to teach people is not helpful. Okay, good teachers never terrorize their students. To terrorize is to attack. And this results in rejection of what the teacher offers. The result is learning failure. So this thought came to me just now. Let's see if we can put these dots together that are kind of starting to appear in my mind. I hope that this makes sense in the end. So at the very beginning of this section in paragraph 1, it says that only someone who believes in scarcity could possibly make the mistake of thinking that the crucifixion is what established the atonement, the suffering part. It was really just the resurrection that established the atonement. So only someone who believes in scarcity could have believed that it was the crucifixion. And then here it says sacrifice is a notion totally unknown to God and arises solely from fear, and that good teachers never terrorize their students. So I'm wondering if this idea of sacrifice comes from a place of lack, because It's only from a place of lack you would believe the crucifixion was the basis of the atonement. And lack and fear are pretty intertwined. You only are afraid because you feel like you lack something. If you know you have everything, what is there to be afraid of? And if you know you are invulnerable because you have everything, what is there to be afraid of? So, this idea of sacrifice that is taught in so many religions, not just Christianity, but so many religions have this belief in needing to sacrifice something in order to be worthy or as a sign that you are trying. And that is really to terrorize your students if you're a teacher teaching sacrifice. Because you're saying, not only were you lacking so much that Christ had to die and suffer to pay for you, but also you need to continue to sacrifice. You were already lacking to begin with, and then you have to give up things, which increases your sense of feeling lack because you have to release something. You have to give up something that you treasured. It wouldn't be a true sacrifice, right? If you didn't care about it. So asking sacrifice is to give up something you treasure. And this involves terror. Like, this is considered terrorizing your students. I don't know. Like I said, that thought just kind of like all of a sudden I saw these dots. And so maybe that doesn't make any sense to anyone else, but it all of a sudden makes some sense to me. Paragraph 5. I have been correctly referred to as the Lamb of God who taketh away the sins of the world. But those who represent the Lamb as blood-stained do not understand the meaning of the symbol. Correctly understood, it is a very simple symbol that speaks of my innocence. The lion and the lamb lying down together symbolize that strength and innocence are not in conflict, but naturally live in peace. And then this is in quotes. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God, close quote, is another way of saying the same thing. A pure mind knows the truth, and this is its strength. It does not confuse destruction with innocence, because it associates innocence with strength, not with weakness. So it's true that Christ, like a symbol of Christ, is a lamb. But if you represent the lamb as bloodstained, as like the lamb that has been slaughtered for the rest of us, you're overcomplicating the symbol and you don't understand it correctly. It's a very simple symbol. Correctly understood, it is a very simple symbol that speaks of my innocence. So the one that I want to think about more here is the lion and the lamb lying down together symbolize that strength and innocence are not in conflict, but naturally live in peace. And then saying, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God, is another way of saying the same thing. So I wonder if it's saying that the pure in heart is innocence, right? That would make sense to me. For they shall see God is strength, is being associated with strength. If the lamb and the lion laying down together is saying the same thing as blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God, then seeing God must be associated with strength. And blessed are the pure in heart. The pure in heart must be the innocence. Paragraph 6. Innocence is incapable of sacrificing anything. I'm just going to say that again. Innocence is incapable of sacrificing anything because the innocent mind has everything and strives only to protect its wholeness. The innocent's like, I have everything. I'm just keeping my wholeness. There's nothing, there's nothing I need to give up in order to attain something else. We sacrifice things usually, I think, right? We sacrifice something in order to hopefully get something better. But if you already have everything, what need would there be to sacrifice? You already have everything. It cannot project. The innocent cannot project. It can only honor other minds because honor is the natural greeting of the truly loved to others who are like them. Can I read that one again? I'm sorry. I know sometimes I just read things over and over. The innocent can only honor other minds because honor is the natural greeting of the truly loved to those who are like them. And since we're all like each other and we're all truly loved, the innocent would never project onto somebody else. What would you project? Oh, I'm truly loved. I'm going to project that onto you. Oh, wait, except it's not projection because you are also truly loved. Like, it's just truth, it's not projection. The Lamb taketh away the sins of the world, in the sense that the state of innocence or grace is one in which the meaning of the atonement is perfectly apparent. When you are in a state of innocence or grace, the true meaning of the atonement is perfectly apparent. The atonement is entirely unambiguous. It is perfectly clear because it exists in light. Only the attempts to shroud it in darkness have made it inaccessible to those who do not choose to see. So yeah, people have tried to kind of shroud the atonement in darkness with these ideas of sacrifice and, you know, we are unworthy and someone had to suffer because of our unworthiness. Like, that's all darkness. Only the attempts to shroud it in darkness have made it inaccessible to those who do not choose to see. So even those attempts to shroud it are not going to work unless you're choosing not to see, unless you actually don't want to see it, and then those shrouds work. But once you want to see it, no shroud can stand between you and the true meaning of atonement. Paragraph 7. The atonement itself radiates nothing but truth. It therefore epitomizes harmlessness and sheds only blessing. It could not do this if it arose from anything but perfect innocence. Innocence is wisdom because it is unaware of evil, and evil does not exist. Hence why every time it did quotes around evil. Your evil thoughts, your evil past, technically evil does not exist. It is, however, perfectly aware of everything that is true. The resurrection demonstrated that nothing can destroy truth. Good can withstand any form of evil, as light abolishes forms of darkness. The atonement is therefore the perfect lesson. It is the final demonstration that all the other lessons I taught are true. If you can accept this one generalization now, there will be no need to learn from many smaller lessons. You are released from all errors if you believe this. And you're like, oh wait, what was the this I'm supposed to believe? And I think the this that we're supposed to believe is good can withstand any form of evil, as light abolishes forms of darkness. Because then it goes on to say the atonement is therefore the perfect lesson and the final demonstration that all other lessons I taught are true. So if you remember in a previous section, it talked about the phases of atonement, and we talked about how we have to release a little bit of our belief in separation and fear, and then we can accept a little more atonement, which is the undoing, or vice versa. I don't know which comes first, the chicken or the egg. So we're like releasing piece by piece. But this is saying if we can accept like this one generalization, this one principle that good can withstand any form of evil, that light abolishes darkness, that technically like the evil and the darkness aren't actually real, even though they feel very real. If we can accept that, then we won't have to learn by all these smaller lessons that are trying to get us to that point. So the sooner we can just accept that generalization, the sooner we don't need all these all these baby steps. Paragraph 8. The innocence of God is the true state of the mind of his Son. In this state, your mind knows God, for God is not symbolic. He is fact. I just want to go back to that first sentence. The innocence of God is the true state of the mind of his Son. And I think it's because, like it already said, we are an extension of God. We are a piece of him. And so if he's innocent, then we are also innocent because we are a piece of him. So, anyway, in this state of innocence, your mind knows God, for God is not symbolic, he is fact. Knowing his son as he is, you realize that the atonement, not sacrifice, is the only appropriate gift for God's altar, where nothing except perfection belongs. The understanding of the innocent is truth. That is why their altars are truly radiant. The understanding of the innocent is truth. So if you are innocent, then you understand only truth. That is why their altars are truly radiant. So that is the end of chapter 3, section 1. I hope this gave you a lot to think about. Please comment. Again, always, I would love to hear your thoughts. If there's anything new that you learned, any aha moments, any questions, any alternate ways of interpreting things, I would love to hear it. And we'll hopefully see you next time.